Hi everyone, Chuck here. Sorry it took so long to release this. I kind of tried to combo together something with more production value, but with leaguestart just around the corner, I decided to try and record everything in one take. Do refer to the timestamps below in the description if you want to skip ahead. I'll try to keep this video as short as possible, but I also had to keep it sufficiently detailed for the less experienced players. If it takes off, I'll try and make more. This guide is a Terminus S physical/core flicker strike build, primarily directed at newish players or those who have always wanted to try flicker, but never dared due to the infamous investment required for the high-end versions. As such, I will not be covering the high investment versions as there is covered in plenty of other guides. Fair warning, if you cannot handle rapid flashes of light or are prone to motion sickness, flicker strike is probably not the build for you. This guide will assume that you have basic knowledge of this game. If there's anything you're unclear on at the end, you can still feel free to ask. Flicker is a totally viable league starter contrary to what seems to be popular belief. It's not OP broken, but it's a very fast glass cannon that's cheap to start even at the beginning of a league. Unless you play solo self-found, in which case I cannot in good conscience recommend the build because we do have a mandatory unit. If you want something unkillable, or a bosser for pinnacle or uber content, this is not a build for you. Remember that you don't need an all-rounder for league start necessarily. I would tell you just play the way you want to play, skills you want to play. I've got at least like 10 characters last league, and I started with a really scuffed elementalist Herald Thunder Auto Bomber. It was not necessarily a smooth experience, but I got there in the end. I play with skills generally I haven't messed around too much with before, and above all else, I was having fun. Remember to play what you enjoy. If that's a meta build, that's totally fine too. I've been struggling since Ascendancy League and only started to really learn from my mistakes around Harvest and grow as a player. No build is going to magically make you good at this game. It's all knowledge, experience. I like to play with new skills to keep things fresh, and finding out how to work them on the fly gives me satisfaction, and I take away lessons from these. And generally seems to be one of the better ways I learn rather than just watching a video guide. Of course, sometimes the lesson will be, wow, this item/skill sucks. I shouldn't be using this for leveling or whatnot. But hey, you're learning in the process. My take is that if you haven't given it a go yourself, consider doing it, form your own opinion. You might actually like it, and most importantly, you probably take away something from it. I will cover issues you may face when using a build and tips on how to play it effectively at the end of the video. Now, why would you want to play this glass cannon? It's really fast. We want to rush for more map generation from Atlas completion bonuses, which will mean that we get more maps to run. We just hold down right mouse button or whatever key you prefer for flicker, pick up only the big pieces of loot, kill the map boss if possible, put it in sell dump tab, and hope it sells. You could go with Raider for even more zoom, totally fine, but I went with Slayer because I've played one too many Raiders recently, and I think it's also a bit friendlier for league start because of Slayer's overreach capabilities. Anyway, enough justification of why to run this set build. Let's go into details on how. Starting mandatory unit. Our mandatory unit is a two-handed sword, Terminus S. There is an alternative option, a roll sacrifice, but I'm not going to Terminus because I think it's easier build for and doesn't make you take increased damage. Even after its last nerf, it's still got great damage and can be used in early raid maps. You legitimately don't need anything else, so long as you take some of the crit chance notes, a diamond flask, maybe 1 or 2 extra frenzy charges, and you're ready to go. Now, this is a level 51 sword, so we will have to hold off playing flicker until then. But by the time we get to that point, it is very likely we have picked up 1 or 2 chaos or the equivalent currency, which is what this sword is probably going to cost you. It's usually a cheap unit. Other units are not required for flicker strike, but I will bring up recommendations or goals at the end of the video. With that, we come to the leveling. Don't try to run Flicker Strike any earlier than Terminus. We have plenty of solid options for our skills. You can go with Spectral Helix, which is the meta go-to skill for leveling nowadays, but personally I'm not a fan. Alternatives include the Steel skills. I don't like core Steel skill usage, but that's just me. Frostblades follows nearly the same skill tree that we'll be using at the end, but it will lack single target damage. I still level with it anyway and had few problems. Just pick up like Trinity, Herald for the elements you lack, keep upgrading a two-handed melee weapon as you level with the Rustic Sash recipe. You can go with bleed skills too, or even run a bow build. Thus keep in mind the respec cost required. In the description for 2 pop-up buildings, one of which is a character level just to demonstrate the viability of this build, another one is a suggested leveling route. If you choose to play fist only, I would say you might want to consider focusing on the impales before the crit notes. You find my character a little bit odd because it uses a self-shield setup, but I'll explain that in showcase later. You note the HP pool may seem abysmal, but I assure you it's sufficient for early late content. You can choose a path into life notes by flicker. Since you're a glass cannon, you might as well make sure you're doing enough damage so they can't swing back. When you hit level 51, you want the following gemlings at the bare minimum: Flicker Strike, Multi Strike, Close Combat, Ruthless, or Melee Splash. Generally you'll be running Melee Splash. Ruthless is more for bossing. I actually prefer Ruthless early on because if I'm lacking damage, I can guarantee that I kill something, and that will help my Hero Eyes like prop. If you don't want to play with cold damage, replace Close Combat with Brutality. For auras, I will recommend level 1 Precision, Hero Eyes, Arctic Armor. You can alternatively play around with Flesh and Stone, Hatred, Defiance Banner if you decide to play the build as Fist only with Brutality Link. Should you choose to go pure glass cannon, I would say slot in Grace, mess around until you have a small enough mana post, sustain Flicker. Ancestral Protector linked with multiple totems and Ancestral War Chief. Plonk these 2 down for bosses or tough enemies. You definitely want a guard skill like Molten Shell on your left mouse button or set out your cast when damage taken. If you choose the latter, make sure it's not over leveled. If cast when damage taken is too high level, you're taking too much damage for it to be of use. If Molten Shell is too high level, it won't link properly. Now, some of you might be wondering why Arctic Armor. See, okay, Flicker Strike treats you as a stationary target, so we're benefiting from the stationary bonuses, which isn't a lot, but for League Start, it's something, and it's also getting buffed. The other thing is that I actually like the alternate quality versions for Arctic Armor. Anomalous Arctic Armor has a chance to freeze enemies that hit you, which is huge. Divergent Arctic Armor will increase the effects of the stationary defensive layers. But personally, I will stick with Anomalous because of how valuable of a crowd control effect that freezes. For your Ascendancy, you'll be taking Slayer. Take your Ascendancy is when you can as you level. If you're really struggling in clearing Izaro, find help. But it's totally doable on your own, except maybe overlap with your RNG at the start of League is impeding your ability to upgrade your gear. For the order of notes, you want Brutal Fervor, Bane of Legends, or Endless Hunger. Take the other one that you left out next, and then Hitsman. Overleech is a fantastic defensive layer and can be improved with Volpact. The other notes that give you damage, attack speed, and then Overkill Leech, I would say you can definitely pick the other things on Ascendancy, but for League Starter or new player, I would say this is a balanced loadout to learn the ropes with, if you are new to Flicker. For the next bit, I'll give a quick map or two for showcase, go over the demo character's gear and skill tree, explain why I built mine the way it is. Keep in mind that my demo player is no means a min-max version, it is purely meant to demonstrate Flicker can work with just basic gear. Okay, so as you can see, my character is level 78. It's a T11 Crimson map. We've seen mods. You can see this is obviously not necessarily ideal, but as you can see, Hero Eyes does most of the work. And we got something big. We got Acceleration Prime, which honestly increases our damage by a shit ton. And clear. Just gotta be careful. I just skipped the guy because it's taking too long here. We don't care about killing everything, but we want to like clear the bulk of it and move on. As you can see, my PC is kind of scuffed, but that's alright. Still runs like. Okay, I would still try and kill the boss, because this boss is really easy. I'll pop Valais over here and like increase the true effect. Expensive. We're here at temporal chains, which is not ideal. Summon the golem.
I can't do this just yet.
Like I said, it's not a great map, it's not ideal. But as you can see, most of the trash dies, and that's important. Yeah, we missed out some grass, that's fine. But our Nemesis mods, well, what are you gonna do? I mean, the whole point here is you don't go fast from this. You don't want to stress too much over every single piece, because everything is a full. Okay, I'm gonna skip that because our resistance are kind of fucked, like I mentioned before. I don't know what I can do. Yeah, I'll just quickly go over the gear here and give you my rationale why I think this is viable. Cow. Nothing special. Very solid helmet. Okay, no, this is definitely special helmet. You want this helmet early on if you can get it for cheap. Paired with the shrine notes, it's absolutely fantastic. Maybe skip this one here because you know, glass cannon. Terminus S, I've covered this before, no need to cover it again. Armor, nothing special. Amulet, nothing special either. Gloves, this is a bit of an odd one because I just put this on my stash. I just couldn't bother to look for another set of gloves. Really, as you can see, it's not that special. Dark Ray Vectors, not corrupted, not enchanted, so again, nothing special. Case of hit, it's a bonus but not necessary. Okay, now you notice this weird setup here. It's a self-choose setup. This is absolutely unnecessary. If anything, I don't think it really adds much to the build. Like, okay, let's go offense here. 4K. Take this off. Put this on. 4K. Really, this is much better because our defenses are alright here, but with a self-choose setup, our defenses absolutely get shafted. This is more of a meme than anything. This is me messing around. It's just to prove that this build is able to work even on scuffed as gear like this. Let's see, I'll just quickly cover my auras here. Precision level 1, cheap crit chance and accuracy rating. Hero of Ice, you definitely want to switch clear. The chain explosions will essentially like be mitigation because, you know, you spread the Q effects faster. Arctic armor. Okay, with our showcase done, let's move on to the recommended uniques. Before we begin, new players, you should not be filling your entire equipment setup with uniques. It is very likely to leave you with survivability issues. You will still want rare pieces of gear in certain slots to give you resistance cap and add flat life. Remember that the first priority you have at endgame is to cap your resistances and have a reasonable life pool. And you also want a way of mitigation, be it lots of evasion or lots of armor. Also, with the changes to unique item drop rate and monster rarity, it is likely you have to take what you can get. As such, I have listed some options for each slot. Remember that you will not need perfect rolls at the get-go, especially with the changes to the Divine Orb. I will flash set recommendations on the screen as you carefully consider what each piece brings to your build, both beneficial and detrimental. I will not go into too much detail because I don't want to make this guide any longer than it needs to be. Starting with helmets, of all these solid options, I do not recommend Abysses unless you're prepared to play full evasion glass cannon and embrace the cast on death portal lifestyle. For your sword, you want Terminus S or Oracle's Flickers, that one I won't cover again. I suggest looking into other endgame builds when you want to transition out. Perhaps go for a more powerful rare, or go Void Forge and convert Trinity Flicker Strike. For your chest, all these are solid options. The real price chest you eventually want is Replica for Roosevelt. It's one of the things I'll be saving for first, as it usually means expensive through the league, being a chase item. You do not need this to get started. This is a very solid piece, but you do not need to have this. Gloves. If you pick Azeria's Acuity, you want to give Vow Pack on your skill tree so you can scale a skill point. For all scums, consider taking the accuracy notes to boost your crit chance. For your boots, Darkwave Vectors, Blood Dance, Rose Chase. Last one only if you have Cat Stealth to go with it. I would say that ideally you want Frenzy Corrupt Darkwave Vectors at the end because they'll probably be your best in slot. For your Amulet, Pandemonius is the best in slot for Cold Flicker. Astromantis and Azerius Foible is more to alleviate stat concerns early on. Cheaper options include Carnage Heart, the Wrestle Salute, Harry's Truth. For your rings and belt, I will not be recommending uniques necessarily because as a league starter, it's very likely majority of resistances will be coming from here. You can use something like Praxis to assist with mana sustain if you're having trouble getting Elrond Ring. For non-channeling skills, mana cost reduction. For belts, you want Solid Leather, Heavy, or Stygian Vice. You can go with Solters, which will require adjustments in your playstyle. It is not one for me personally. If you choose to run it, you need to find a guide that goes into detail on how to properly sustain it. You can go with something basic like Belt or Deceiver, or perhaps a Magnet, but again, I would generally recommend rares. If you think there's a unique that I didn't cover that should be covered, feel free to share it in a comment. I try to choose what I believe to be a cheaper options, more solid as for what a new player can use. Okay, for the common issues to your face and general tips, starting with the most common one as a Flicker Strike player, dying a lot. Have you ensured your resistances are capped? Do you have at least 2 to 3k life? You want more, obviously. Are you trying to spread your defenses between armor and evasion too much? If so, consider swapping into maybe like Iron Reflexes so that you get all in for armor, or going into just all in evasion with grace and whatnot. That will definitely help. Number 2, you're struggling with raid maps. Remember, you do not need to start grinding raid maps on day 1. The streamers and players you see doing otherwise are usually the tippy top man of the crowd. Running lower tier maps consistently will get your currency way faster and bang your head on the wall in raid maps. Especially every time you run into magic or rare pack. Furthermore, you want to get EXP for your valuable skill points first and foremost because they are free upgrades prior to actual gear upgrades, especially assuming that you've been screwed by RNG. Point 3, the skills trees provided in the puffer buildings are a rough guide and not set in stone. Tweak it to your liking if necessary. You can go for the life cluster on the left side of the tree if you feel like you really prefer more life. Point 4, if you've played a few leagues now and you run into issue with currency generation, maybe you want to reflect on the time that you spend. Like what do you spend time doing the most in the game? Ask other players how they do it. I use an absolute pack rat with rares and uniques, but with experience I now worry less about every drop and try to focus on going as fast as possible. Experience has taught me what to pick up. There is no substitute for experience. Picking up only the rare drops and things that I think may sell, I won't fasten price. I just throw everything in the dump tabs and I try to sell big. If it doesn't sell, I will sell for lesser along the way. And You don't want to like do your pricing like after every time you exit a map. You want to do it at the end of your session. Loop filters are your friend. If you do not know how to use one, highly recommend that you go and find out. I generally use never sinks, random for league start, switch into semi-strict around the end of campaign, and then I customize strict for my personal preferences when I feel comfortable. For particular enemy types, with rarity changes of magic and rare packs, it's hard to say. This is an issue for me in Sentinel League. You need to keep an eye out for certain enemy types that will stop your flicker in its tracks. Either by being crazy tanky, usually Centaur or Juggernaut mods, or dangerous effects will proc you if you get hit, like Magma Barrier, Lightning Mirages, Heralds of the Obelisk. Generally with these packs, you want to pay attention when you're flickering. If you see the effect spawning, you might want to bait it out, get it away before you continue flickering. If you don't feel confident about your chances or it's taking too long. If you don't feel confident about your chances, for example, they are paired with a rejuvenation pack or too close to a shrine buffing them, I would say skip them. You'll be much happier in the long run. Dangerous mechanics. Now, well, I've recommended shrines early in the demo. These are a double-edged sword. Packs of ranged mobs next to crit shrines can decimate you before you get close enough to flicker them through. Divine shrines are a nightmare if you don't get to the center fast enough to click on the shrine. Pay attention to shrine you're about to flicker or slam into. Occasionally in maps with terrible placement of undying totems can also screw you if you're unfortunate and realize it too late. For these invulnerable situations, I would say back off, let the mobs come to you, or just move on. Also, be careful of opening juice content like Legion when you're undergeared. Juice essence mobs, expedition effects. If your builds can't handle them early, maybe consider focusing on pure speed mapping until you can upgrade your gear sufficiently until you're confident enough to tackle them. Remember that death is part of the game, don't let it discourage you too much. Play what you want, take breaks, can't emphasize this enough. Don't force yourself to commit to a currency making strategy or meta build. Remember at the end of the day, it's a game. You're here to have fun, not take up a new job. Personally, I get bored real easy. I jump from build to build, usually ending up with at least 2-3 characters per league. I think this league has been a record for me. I have like 14 builds. Not all of it made 90, but it's okay. They were an experience. I had fun, despite arch nemesis changes and other aspects. Okay, this video has spanned on way longer than intended. I hope it will be useful to some of you. Again, if you're unsure about anything, feel free to ask in the comments. Cheers.